If you're watching this, you probably just received your Kickstarter for Battletech Mercenaries in the mail. In this video, I'm going to show you how to paint up the color schemes of 4 of the most renowned mercenary units in the Battletech universe. And I'm going to be using the mechs that came in this box set. I'm going to use 4 of them for this video, and another 4 for part 2 of this video, which will be coming up soon. The primary priming treatment that I'm going to be using on these models is what I call Splash Dash. It starts first with applying a white primer onto these models. I'm going to be using a airbrush primer, but you can always use a rattle can instead. And then after that, use Dark Tone by Army Painter. Put a little bit of water in it, about an 80% to 20% mix, and then generously apply it onto all the mechs that you're going to be working with. This will give the mechs not only a very nice pre-shade before the speed paints go on, but it also provides natural panel lighting. It makes the panel lines really dark and distinct, and it's great for mechs. Be sure the wash is completely dry before you move on to speed paints. The first color I'm going to put down is Broadsword Silver, which is a speed paint but metallic, and it's a really quick way to make things look silver and also apply the highlighting and shading all in one fell swoop and in one brush stroke with this awesome paint. You'll want to put it on all these areas of the weapons, anything that's protruding and shooty. You'll want to go ahead and apply it. It doesn't matter what mech it is. This silver will create a point of interest and also identify these features as weapons. It is very universal and it works really well. This next speed paint is called Raging Sea. I don't really use this very much because it's kind of an odd color, but it actually works really well on canopy glass. Just apply it under the glass panels of the mechs that you're working on, and it will actually look like a greenish bluish hue, which is a really awesome color. Here's a pro tip. If you want to know where on the glass to paint, look at the datasheet. Anything that's shaded black in the datasheet, like I was showing you, is actually glass. So if you're not sure where on the mech is the canopy, just look at the datasheet. Or if you're working on these 4 mechs, the Chameleon, the Ossol, the Caesar, and the Flea, then you can just go ahead and look through this montage that I'm providing here. I paint all the panels so you can just follow along. After laying down the Broadsword Silver and the Raging Seas colors, all the quote-unquote common colors are all laid down. Now I'm going to start concentrating on specific mercenary companies, and you can just pick the ones that you like and paint all the mechs or some of the mechs in their colors. The first mercenary company I'm going to cover are the infamous Wolves Dragoons. Wolves Dragoons, formed in 3004, are a legendary mercenary unit in the Battletech universe. Originally created as an advanced force for Clan Wolf to gather intelligence on the Inner Sphere. Renowned for their advanced Star League era technology, disciplined organization, and a strict code of conduct, they quickly became the premier mercenary force. Key moments include their defiance of House Kurita in 3028, pivotal contributions during the Fourth Succession War, and their transformation of Outreach into a mercenary hub. During the clan invasion, they defended the Inner Sphere against their clan origins, solidifying their legacy as a symbol of honor and resilience. I will be painting up specifically the Alpha Regiment of Wolves Dragoons, which is basically a black on orange combination. For this, I'm going to be using Grim Black and Fire Giant Orange speed paint, and I'm going to be using this Chameleon over here. Really, you can do this on any mech. The concept's basically the same. You want to paint black on basically the accent portions, which I've chosen part of the gun, also the middle of the torso, parts of the arm, certain plates on the arm. Now, the one guy that I showed at the start of this section, you can go back to that and refer to basically where some of this black would go. I think it's a good idea to put it in these areas that I'm showing here. I've also put the black around the canopy frame. Now you want to do this slowly and carefully. And then after that, I kind of pick areas on the back of the mech, on the shoulders, and other areas that I'm showing here. The black just contrasts really nice against the orange that's going to come right after this. On the rest of the mech, I'm going to be using Fire Giant Orange. Now, any area that was white before, I just make sure to cover with this orange. In my past videos, you might have noticed I would have painted the entire mech orange and then painted black on top of it, but this time with this new technique. I'm actually doing this to allow each color to have only one layer of speed paint. This will allow the panel lining that we had done with our splash dash to pop from the bottom, making the mech look really sweet. Onward to the Wolves Dragoons logo. Of course, you can use decals for this, or you can follow this freehand method. I first apply pure red acrylic paint and paint a circle on a large part of the panel, like for instance the chameleon's left shoulder here, and then I use a detailing brush and apply black around the periphery of that circle. Try to keep it as nice and neat as possible. Now for the wolf's head, you want to use the same detailing brush and then slowly add a tiny circle for its head and then 2 lines for the snout, and then carefully add in some fangs on the very front of the snout, maybe some ears, and then once it's dry, switch to yellow and apply a little dot for the eye, and you're all set. Next up is Snord's Irregulars. They were founded in the 2970s by the eccentric Cranston Snord. They are a unique mercenary unit blending combat prowess with a passion for treasure hunting. Initially formed after Snord's dismissal from the Wolves Dragoons, the unit became renowned for selecting missions near sites of historical or cultural significance, recovering artifacts while achieving military objectives. Their unorthodox tactics and humorous flair earned them respect and frustration alike. Aligned with House Steiner, they played key roles during the Third Succession War, delaying Kurita's advances and preserving invaluable relics. Under the current leadership of Rhonda Snord, they continued balancing military success with cultural preservation, becoming legendary by 3058. So I found this painting guide for Snord's Irregulars on the web. Now this is basically a very nice brown camo pattern, which I'm going to use these 3 colors and this flea as my mech of choice. I start with Grim Black Speed Paint and I apply it onto areas that I want to add a black accent. For instance, the actuators on the front of the legs, on the arm sections over here, and then I switch to the lighter brown color Sand Golem, and then this is the fun part. I just apply swaths of this light brown all over the mech. I'm going to be creating a camouflage pattern with this, so just randomly apply it all over the mech, and then after that you'll switch to Darkwood Speed Paint, the darker brown, and then apply it onto all the rest of the areas that are still remaining white. So try not to cover the lighter brown or the black or the silver or Raging Sea that you had applied earlier, but apply it onto anywhere that you notice white. One of the nice parts about this technique is that even though it looks tedious to work around the other colors, it is actually really easy to pick out the white areas. Just be careful around the canopy braces because it could be very easy to get the color into the Raging Sea blue areas. Otherwise, it's just like coloring within the lines of a coloring book. Now, Snord's Irregulars probably has the most unique logo. It is basically an American quarter. So what you want to do is use some silver acrylic paint, pick a nice big panel, and then paint a silver circle. Once that silver circle is dry, grab some black paint, and then lightly feather on some impressions to make it look like the wording and the eagle in the middle of the coin. Now we move on to the Northwind Highlanders. The Highlanders are a storied mercenary unit with roots tracked back to the ancient Scottish clans of Tara. Established as a coherent military force during the Star League era, they became renowned for their discipline, loyalty, and elite combat skills. Unique for their cultural unity and connection to their ancestral home of Northwind, they maintain traditions through centuries of conflict. Key events include their service during the Succession Wars and their pivotal reclamation of Northwind in 3029 under House Davion, securing the company's independence. By 3058, the Highlanders had solidified their legacy as one of the Inner Sphere's most iconic and respected units. The painting guide that I'm featuring here shows a light brown camouflage followed by a tartan on one of the armored panels. These are the speed paints that I'm going to use for it. It's only 3, and I'm going to be using this Ossaul mech for my Highlanders. I start out with some Camo Cloak speed paint. As my accent color, I picked these panels on the mech, like around the shoulders, on the arms, like the gun panels, and so on, also on the antennas. Really, it's kind of up to you where you want to put these colors, but you want to use them sparingly because you're going to give slight points of interest all over the mech, but it's not a major color. Onward to the camo. Similar to the flea that I had painted earlier, I used some palette bone speed paint and then just apply long streaks of this very light brown color all over the mech. There's really no rhyme or reason where you want to put it. The good look for it is to have a fairly uniform distribution all over the mech. And then once you're done with this palette bone, you're going to be switching to the darker color, which is going to be hardened leather. And similar to the Northwind Highlanders scheme, anything that is remaining white on the mech will be painted in this brown color. You want to be as careful as possible around the colors that you painted before, but really, because this is a darker color, if you slightly overlap other colors, as long as you're neat about it, it will look nice and natural. Now, because this technique tries to cover over white, be sure to go over your work again to make sure none of the white spots were missed, or else it'll look pretty odd. Once done, it'll look like an amazing camouflage. To paint the tartan, I used this green and blue from Army Painter. I first applied the blue onto one of the flat and more rectangular panels on the mech, like right here. And once dry, I use a detailing brush and then carefully apply these lines to make it look like a Scottish tartan. Once it's dry, it will look like this, which is pretty cool. I'm going to freehand the logo onto this mech by using these 5 colors. I start with red, I paint an upside down triangle, and then make the sides of the triangle a little bit fatter with a little bit more red. Once it's dry, I take blue and I carefully dot the tartan pattern onto the red triangle. I wait for that to dry and then I apply a line of silver right down the middle, followed by black for the hilt and the handle of the sword. And then I switch to yellow to apply it onto the hilt and the pommel. Our next mercenary company is McCarron's Armored Cavalry, also known as the Big Mac. This is a powerful mercenary force formed in the late 28th century by Archibald McCarron. Known for their size, discipline, and loyalty to House Leal, they grew to 5 regiments and became the Capellan Confederation's premier mercenary unit. Their unwavering allegiance to the Confederation made them unique among mercenaries, functioning more like an extension of a state military. Key events include their defense of Capellan space during the Succession Wars and their instrumental role in Operation Guerrero, reclaiming lost territories for House Leal. By 3058, they stood as symbols of Capellan resurgence and strength. If you're looking for an easy color scheme, this is probably the easiest one, the 6th Regiment of McCarron's Armored Cavalry. All you will need is orc skin speed paint and then just select panels on the mech. In this case, I'm using the Caesar. And then following the painting guide that I showed just a few seconds ago, you can pick out similar panels all over the mech like I'm showing here and paint it green. Now the rest of the mech, if you've noticed, I've already done the splash dash on. So it's a white mech that's already pre-washed. It's got all the panel lines showing and it's done as far as white's concerned. So all you have to do is just apply the green panels and voila, you are done. To freehand in the logo, I'm going to be using these 3 acrylic paints and I'm going to be picking a nice big panel, which is, I guess, the crotch over here. I first start with an inverted green triangle right here like this, and then I allow it to completely dry. After that, I use silver and then freehand in a shape of a knight, like with the arms and the body, followed by red for the red plume on top. I then use some black acrylic paint and just gently feather on some defining features to make it look more like a knight, and then you're all set. Next, I finish off the bases with some black primer all the way around to get rid of the overspray. I then make the tops of the bases look like soil by applying dark wood speed paint onto the overspray of primer in this area. It'll look nice and brown like this. And I wait for the entire base to dry before I move on to my next step, which is using white paint and a small detailing brush. This is something that I do, is completely optional, but I honestly have a very hard time identifying my mechs on the tabletop. So I carefully freehand in the names of the mechs on the very front of the base. This serves 2 purposes. 1, it's easier for me to identify my mechs, and number 2, it actually denotes the front of the model, which is important in the game of Battletech. Make sure to plan enough space so you can fit the entire word in. For instance, flea is much easier to fit in than, let's just say, Caesar. Again, purely optional, but really fun to do. To spruce up the bases a little bit more, I use some Elmer's glue and some flocking. I apply random patches of glue on top of the base, or you can cover the entire base. It's completely up to you. It makes it look like patches of grass and gives the model a little bit more of an interesting look. Protect your work with one layer of gloss varnish followed by another layer of matte varnish. This gives it a slight shininess, but not too much. Here is my chameleon painted up as Wolves Dragoons. The flea painted up as Snord's Irregulars. Next is the Ossal painted up as Northwind Highlanders. And finally the Caesar as McCarron's Armored Cavalry. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it was helpful, and I actually have part 2 of this extended Mercenary series coming up, so look out for that video next. Until the next time, happy hobbying, happy battleteching, and I will see you soon.